Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Late Night Tips. In tonight's episode I'd like to share my first impressions about the Elektron Analog 4 after only 1 week of owning it. Let's get right into it. So I already really like the Analog 4. It's a very powerful synthesizer. It sounds great and actually it's not as difficult to operate as I first thought. Maybe I could wish for Elektron to have a little bit more consistency when it comes to their shortcut or button placement. For example, to access the global menu on the Analog 4, you have to press function and this key in here. So essentially you need to use 2 hands. On the RYTM, it's just 1 hand in here. So if you have to operate all 3 of them, it can get a little bit challenging how to access what. You need to build this muscle memory to be able to do that efficiently. My first impressions about the Analog 4 being difficult actually stem from the fact that it's a really deep synthesizer and it's a very powerful machine. And I would say that this is the most powerful machine that Elektron has ever manufactured. It has a lot of functions, a lot of depth, so that's why it might be a little bit challenging. What do I like about the Analog 4? First of all, the envelopes are very powerful and you can get a lot of interesting effects from the envelopes. Let's see. I have this very basic patch. It's just playing a C chord. And I'm going to be using both oscillators, playing this basic sawtooth wave. So we hear a little bit of detune. That's actually pretty nice. So with the envelope, what you can do is select oscillator 1, frequency modulation, and for here, and for the second parameter that you can actually assign 2, which is amazing, you can go to oscillator 2, frequency modulation as well. So let's start an envelope, maybe a basic triangle, but the one that retriggers, and set the attack in here, and go to depth. On this one, negative. On this one, positive. So this envelope detunes both oscillators by a very small amount, and it detunes both of them, but one of them goes up, the second one goes down, which is actually pretty amazing. And actually you have 2 envelopes, so you can go to the second one and, for example, assign it to vibrato, depth, how about that? And same approach, attack in here, and just give it a little depth, or maybe a little too much. So it's going to start vibrating. So those envelopes are amazing. And what's very interesting is that you can actually place a triggless trig in here and make it not trigger the envelope, or make it trigger the envelope, or only the second envelope, whatever you want. And you can use this as a parameter log, for example, to the filter. So this one does not influence the detune, but it does influence the filter. Pretty amazing. Talking about the filter, it's a really good Elektron analog filter. It works, and I'm really happy that we have actually 2 filters in here, both the low pass and the multi-mode. We can set it to high pass. I think this is essential in order to be able to mix the synthesizer with the rest of the instruments. The filter sounds really good. Maybe one little complaint is that those analog Elektron filters are too resonance happy. So even at a relatively low resonance amount, they're going to go crazy and start self-oscillating. It's also polyphonic, as you can hear, and the polyphony on it is really smart. So for example, we have, if we press in here, we can see the notes that I have on this trig, which is really neat and really handy. and these are 3 notes. So I have one more voice left. So I have this on track 3. It's a completely separate sequence, can be a separate voice, and it's not going to interfere. So it's not like the mono machine where you had the poly mode and nothing worked if you were in poly. Everything else still works in poly, so which is very, very nice. And most importantly, it has conditional trigs. It's my favorite functionality, and I'll be abusing this. What's more, you can also use conditional trigs on the CV track, which means that you can control your modular or your analog gear using conditional trigs as well, which is also amazing. Let's look into it. So I have my MS-20 in here, and I'm sending CV control messages to the frequency in here. You can see that the frequency for both oscillators is set to max. So let's see it. So I have a single note that it plays right now. And what I want to do is I want to send the LFO at selected times. And I want to make it vibrate. So what I have here is a trig that essentially triggers the LFO. And the LFO is sending tuning messages to the MS-20. And the cool thing is that I can actually make it conditional. To make it more predictable for the demo purposes, I'm going to give it a fill condition. How about that? So that's here. So let's hear it. So it doesn't trigger, but when I press the fill button, it's going to trigger. Now without, and now with. That is seriously cool, and it gives you a lot of possibilities to control your modular and analog synthesizers using the power of Elektron sequencers. It's amazing. And I have only 2 issues with the Analog 4 so far. The first one might be a little bit controversial because I think that the oscillators don't have a lot of character to them. So if you look at a Moog synthesizer or a Dave Smith, for example, the oscillators just sound good and rich in a sense. This is a pretty basic oscillator, very clean and very easy to tame. So it doesn't have a lot of character, but it has a lot of control, if you know what I mean. And the second issue is actually a confirmed bug that it has. Let me show you a short sequence. Right now, the Analog 4 is slave to the Octatrack via the analog rhythm, and it should change patterns no problem. And normally it does, but if you select the scale to anything but 1, so for example half, and I want to have a longer sequence going in here, it's not going to follow the pattern change. So if you change the pattern and it's set to half, it's going to change the pattern 1 bar later. Let me demonstrate. So pattern 1. So I have a very short sequence in here, taking advantage of the half measure. Let me change the pattern. So the Octatrack changed, the rhythm changed, but this one hasn't. It says it's on pattern 2, but it's really not. You can see in here. It's going to play the entire pattern, and now it's going to change. And actually this happens regardless of your scale settings, change settings in here, and of your direct change settings in this menu. I looked at the forum and it's actually a confirmed bug, and I really hope that they're working on a solution. So that's it. The Analog 4, I already love it. I have only 2 minor problems with it. The rest is just beautiful, and we are going to get along for sure. Let me know if there are any other videos you'd like to see on any of the Elektron gear in the nearest future. Make sure to subscribe to this channel for more tutorials and more jams. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great night and take care.